Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I am joined by Jen again. Hi, Jen.
Hi, I'm very excited to be here today. I am always excited to meet a fellow Philly sports fan.
Yes, today we have on Nathan Hess, and Nathan is one of the few people that I've talked to that went to school for insurance, and now is he's a younger, insurance professional. So I was so happy to find him, and so happy he could join us because he feels so passionate about the insurance industry and about getting the younger generation interested into it. And he's talking to his peers. He's doing the work. He's on the ground doing the work, trying to get people in the industry. So I love it.
Well, that is so exciting because they certainly need new, fresh blood in there to reinvigorate the insurance world and maybe give it a new brand so people don't hate them and come work for them.
Yes. And we talk a lot about that. So with that, let's bring him in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.
Good morning, Nathan. Welcome to the Claims Never Sleep. So happy to have you. How are you today?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me. How are you guys?
Great. I'm so excited to dig in with you because as I was talking to you about before we started recording is, on this podcast, obviously we get a lot of people in claims, and very rarely do I have people in claims who are like, oh, I really wanted to go into insurance. And you're the anomaly. You went to school for this.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Walk us through that. So, just so our listeners know, you went to St. Joe's and you were in their insurance, I think, what is it? Their insurance studies program or risk management program?
Yeah. Risk management and insurance. Yep.
So give us some background, what made you, what put you on that path?
Yeah. So it's funny you dive into that. You kind of give me too much credit. Coming out of high school, all I wanted to be was a doctor. So I wanted to go into a physician's assistant program. I got cold feet on that, and we kind of diverted to the actuarial route. So quick backstory, my mom was actually an actuary. I'm one of four. So before she had my youngest sister and left that, she was an actuary full-time at Hurleysville Insurance, which is now Nationwide. And that's sort of where I got introduced to the statistics and the actuary side of things. So I actually started at St. Joe's as an actuarial science major. Quickly found out I didn't love all the math. So I went more the business route to the risk management and insurance side. And have never looked back, like you said. So, yeah, truly enjoy it. I wish more people would get into it, but I know that's a big initiative on the college front. So it's good to see.
Yeah, and I love hearing that from you. But so when you started in the program, what interested you about insurance at that point and kept you there?
Yeah, so it's funny. You talk to a lot of our counterparts and nobody says it's quote unquote a sexy industry, right? So I think I just enjoyed the business side. I really enjoyed it and still enjoy it from a macro level. So some things I remember in my studies, like the reserving triangles and looking at incurred but not reserved and how that affects things on the back end. I'm a big math and finance guy. So I think I got a lot of my interest from that. And then the claims side, I just enjoyed the service side of things. I was never a sales rep or didn't really have too much interest in the underwriting side. So that's what kind of led me here. I don't want to say I fell into it because I chose it at some point, right? But they always used to say through college, and it's so true, it's a stable profession. There's always a need for it with the growing AI and all that stuff. I don't think it will take our job security. So that's another great portion of it. And I do truly enjoy it. I go to work and I think of my position as a service role. I help clients. I currently have some claims in LA for the wildfires. So it is, I like the empathetic side of it. It's not just, the quote unquote insurance companies steal your dollars and don't ever pay anything. I do look at it as a little beyond, of course, just we're paying people for obviously the insurance policies. There is an emotional connection to it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to dig in too much with the wildfires, but I imagine your role there. I mean, you have people who've lost everything, so you have to be, they're going through such a huge crisis at that point. Like you kind of like a, a friendly face or like a comfort. I would, and
Yep.
some going through something like that. You're a resource and a comfort to them.
Yes, exactly. So we're lucky. We don't have a lot of the residential aspect. We deal with more the commercial fields.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's all the same.
Mm-hmm.
I was just on the phone with an adjuster and a client yesterday, and they're worried about all the smoke and soot and how that's going to affect their business moving forward. And that's their livelihood, right? So, yeah, I definitely, at a bigger company, maybe you don't see all the nuances, but they're certainly there every day.
Yeah. So take us a little bit through your career path. Like, so you go to St. Joe's, you get your degree, and what's your first step into the insurance world? Did you start working at an insurance company while you were like, did you intern anywhere while you were still in college, and did that segue your path in?
Yeah, so I'm actually happy you asked that because that kind of tells the story of how I ended up in claims. So I was a sophomore at St. Joe's. Little backstory: my dad owns a excavation business, so I used to always do that in the summers. I was praying for some internship to get me out of that.
You didn't like working for Dad?
No, I did. I'm very lucky. But I really wanted to get into the industry and start. So I sort of just was interviewing for whatever. A lot of people, I'm sure, know companies really aren't interested in after sophomore year interns, just because the full-time hire isn't right around the corner. So I was lucky enough to get an internship at Philadelphia Insurance, which has ties to St. Joe's, and it was a claims internship. So I was in the general liability unit. I had a general liability manager. I oversaw all, the falls and the scrapes and the bodily injury, all of that stuff. And then I continued that into my junior year, and then junior year summer, and then senior year, I took the year off just to kind of enjoy myself. But then was lucky enough to get a full-time offer at Philadelphia. And even more lucky, they kind of gave me the pick of the crop with where I wanted to be in the claims unit. So that's how I ended up on property, as I know we've spoke about, Megan.
Yeah.
So that is sort of how I got involved with it. I shadowed different units. I looked at different units. But I really did find an interest in going to work, even when I was interning. And you open a different claim and it's a totally different story. It's like you're reading a different book. And that interested me. It wasn't the same repetitive thing over and over. And I could definitely see how it would translate. And obviously fast forward 4 years and here we are now. But yeah, that's sort of the segue of how I got into it. And obviously still here.
And what was it about property that interested you as opposed to all the other areas?
So I think, Jen, that goes back to just my roots. My dad, like I said, is an excavation owner. So throughout high school and summers and, winters and days off, I was always ingrained in that side of things, kind of the base work that goes before a building goes up. So I think the property just spoke to me from I had a genuine interest in it. I'm sure, as many of the listeners and you guys know, if you have family members that own a business, a lot of the work comes home with you. It doesn't stay at work. So I was just constantly around it. And I think that's where the connection was made. And it also helps. I didn't really have an appetite for auto or the general liability stuff. I don't do very well around the blood and gore and all that stuff.
And this is a good thing you didn't become a doctor.
Yeah. So, yeah, everything worked out in the end, right?
And did you feel that way about blood at the time when you had intended to be a physician? Or were you not really thinking about that part of it?
I think, if I can be honest, I think I was more thinking about the dollar signs that was associated with that profession. Coming out of high school, being like, oh, I want to segue my life into something that's, financially stable and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't think the whole mind was working when that decision was made. Coincidentally, probably why I didn't end up following through with that.
So. And I certainly can understand and relate to having a family that has your own business, and Jen can relate as well. So both our families are small business owners. So growing up, you always hear about everything that's going on. At the office, so to speak, when it's part of part of the family. So
yeah. And to that point, I still have, my mom still asks me insurance questions about the business financials. So, and she used to do that back in high school, and I just saw that. I think looking back, I saw the interest she had in it, and it kind of rubbed off on me. So that all goes along with it. But yeah, it's funny how she's very much away from it now. But that knowledge never goes away. She still talks like she's in the industry for sure.
Yeah.
And do you ever regret not following into actuarial science, or do you like where you ended up in claims?
I like certain parts of it. I very much am a math nerd. Math was always my best subject growing up. But it was when I hit Calc 3 Gen, and it sort of seemed like a foreign language, is when I kind of stepped away from it. I wouldn't say I regret it, because I enjoy going to work and I enjoy with the people I deal with and my colleagues and everything like that. It's definitely, it'd be interesting to sit in their seat for a day or two and just kind of see what comes across. Obviously, I know it's a high leverage position, right? They're asked to do a lot, and that in certain circumstances, that means a lot is on the line for them. But no, I don't think I would have it any differently if I could go back.
One of my best friends from college is an actuary, and I remember him taking the exams after we graduated, and that was when I was like, I would never ever be able to do that. I mean, I thought like the bar exam was hard, and like my husband is a doctor, and watching him take all of his medical boards, but those actuarial exams, they're no joke.
I think they're like considered to be like one of the hardest professional tests, I think.
Yeah, I don't keep up with it, but I know at one point there was 7 to pass your associates, I want to say, and then 5 to pass the master. So there's a total of 12 or something. And just the idea of constantly taking them as you continue to work and raise a family and stuff like that. It just more to me, it just didn't sound interesting. But I give all the credit to everyone that does it. I give credit to you guys for doing the bar and all that stuff. I have some college friends that have just passed that, and all the credit to you guys, because I don't know if I would want that to be me.
It wasn't fun. 10 out of 10 do not recommend. That stress.
Yeah.
So you're at Philly Insurance for a while, and I have to say, like, I have a soft place in my heart for Philly
Yeah.
Insurance. My mentor from one of my first jobs out of law school is over there now, and I used to do a lot of their work. So, and it's local to us here, so we love Philly Insurance. But what, you eventually made a change. So what pushed that along for you?
Yeah, so started at Philadelphia. And it's funny, when we first spoke on the phone, Megan, we did connect about Jane, because she was a big part in me wanting to come back for full time. How open she was, how mentoring she was, and all of those things. But the main thing I'll answer your question and then I'll kind of go back. The main thing I left was just, I felt as a young professional in the industry, I was sort of stunted. I just felt like I had hit my ceiling, sort of thing. The promotional route, I just didn't think was there, given the seniority in the claims world and all of those things. And a great opportunity came up at AXA, where I am now. So it was just kind of, for me, a natural stepping stone in my career. It was nothing against the people over there, because I still love them all. I see them at sporting events and stuff like that. And they very much framed who I am, but also the claims professional I am, because I'll tell this story. It was, if you guys recall, it was when we had that bad freeze event after Christmas. I want to say it was four years ago or something like that. But very much how I got my empathetic and sympathetic and service side of this job, or profession, I should say, is from that Philly insures a lot of niche products like daycares, small businesses, stuff like that, where when you get a new claim and you call them initially, they think the sky is falling, the world's coming down, their livelihoods in jeopardy. And that's sort of where I really give Philly all that credit, because I learned not only how to talk on the phone, but to talk somebody down, to offer assistance. Obviously, in the interim and immediately, and it really just shaped who I was in this industry. At least I will always look back on it like that. So that I can't say enough about that place. The work they do is great, but I just felt for myself, it was time to go to bigger. I don't want to say better, because that doesn't tell the full story. But
no, and look, and there's, people make moves all the time, and it's not always a move because where you were was so bad. Just sometimes opportunities arise and you can't pass them up, and that you never know, you could come full circle and end up back at Philly. But that the profession is one that you don't often stay at the same place for 20-30 years, especially if you want to make like steps in your own professional advancement. Like, sometimes a move is what's going to push that along.
Yeah. And the funniest thing about this is, when I was first reached out to, I didn't even know, I didn't even know who AXA XL was. I had never even heard of the company. I thought, the first time I looked on LinkedIn at their page, I was like, is this a spam? Is this some small insurance company? Through school, I kind of took it for granted. Like, we hear about the big companies, the Zurichs, the Chubbs of the world, the Stars of the world, but AXA, I don't know the stat, but I think we're the 4th biggest insurer in the world. Never even came, I never heard about any of them. So yeah, like you said, Megan, it had nothing to do with the people over there. It was just sort of, it made sense at the time. And obviously if I can go back, I would, if an opportunity makes sense moving
Of
forward.
course.
But yes, very, very happy where I am. And like they say, you guys hear it all the time. It's a small industry, right?
Yes.
So I just make it apparent to anybody that, it's never a burned bridge, or, I never want to give you the wrong impression, right? I'm very thankful for obviously everyone's done, but you got to look out for yourself, right? At some point.
Yeah.
So.
And I wanted to touch on what you were talking about though with your training, as learning how to like talk to people, because I think it's such an important skill. In fact, we had someone on this podcast that her background was a 911 operator, and I was like, what an amazing foundation block for claims, because it's very similar. You're dealing with someone in their crisis, and you have to be the voice of reason. You have to not get emotional about it, about what they're telling you, and it's so similar to when you're getting, when you're talking to someone about their claim, especially if it's a property claim and if it involves their business, their livelihood, their home. You have to kind of be able to emotionally detach, but also be that support for them too. So it's such an important skill to learn.
Yeah, I think it gets thrown under the wayside, especially with, I don't want to lump myself in with the generation now, but I think I have to, given my age. But so many people say, people hide behind their emails and they won't pick up the phone. And I just never really truly understood it. I think there's a person-to-person connection you get through the phone that you don't get anywhere else, obviously. But yes, I would argue it's the most important skill in this profession, because you have to be able to deliver great news, but you have to also be able to deliver the worst news possible. I remember at Philadelphia, I would call every insured I denied their claim and go through specifics and explain how the language applied, obviously what the circumstances were. And I used to get cursed off the phone.
I'm sure.
Probably once or twice a week, probably, depending on what the denials looked like. And it was just all, I just took it with a grain of salt, because I never felt like anybody was attacking me personally. It was more so, they were saying this big bad wolf, the insurance company. But unfortunately, that's the job I signed up for, right?
Yeah.
So it gives some perspective for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it that I love, because you always get grounded. Not that I think I have an issue with that, but anybody that, gets sidetracked or goes in a different state of mind or thinking, there's always a circumstance that brings you back to, you're dealing with people. It's real life, and it's people's lives at stake.
Yeah. And I love though that you did that you took the time to talk to the insureds about their denial, because again, like, even despite knowing you're going to get cursed at and yelled at and called names and whatever it may have happened, because one, it's such a good client approach, right?
Yep.
Like, these are still these are still the insureds. You want to continue to have them as insureds. It just happens that whatever claim that they've brought is not covered under their policy, and to be there and explain to them why, and go through the letter with them and answer their questions, it is also a great testament to you and the companies that you work for, that you take that extra time to to handle those relationships, because those relationships are so important.
Yeah,
sure, that's. I mean, it also goes to that, like, insurance companies are not out to just deny claims.
Yes.
But
Yep.
but there is a written document and it's a policy and it covers certain things. So you just, I think sometimes explaining why certain claims are denied is very helpful.
Yeah. And that was, that just brings me back to something one of my professors used to say. And he used to always say, if you can do the claims job at an insurance company, you can do any job.
Period.
Because for all the things we're talking about, but also we're the last line of defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody that steps in front of us and can give us an excuse or give us a way out. We're kind of the punching bag, but we're also the person when they market and they advertise what service we're providing. It's us. It's the claim service. So I do take a great deal in that. Obviously, I hope that is being conveyed. I don't take lightly what I do. Because obviously it can impact some people in some pretty big ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I think it's difficult because in high school, you don't learn about insurance. You don't learn what kind of limits, like in Pennsylvania, the limits are so low on an auto policy, right? And then you get into an accident and say, well, what do you mean I only have this much coverage? And I think it's the same when you're working at an insurance company that is insuring small niche businesses, mom and pop businesses. They don't know, right? Like it's different when you're on the phone with like the head of human resources or the CEO of a company that has 10,000 employees. Like they get it. Right? Like they have to understand what's going on. It's part of their job. But when you're talking to, and I think it goes back to the three of us talked about how we have family businesses, right? Like my dad calls me, he has 6 employees. He doesn't understand the insurance part of it, but I can, So that's it. Like you're talking to somebody who's your dad's dealing with his excavating business. Like my dad makes tombstones, Megan's family makes hot dogs. Like,
it's all the same.
Yeah.
Right? Like what you know, and you're very good at what you do, but the rest of it's like it should be in a different language. They don't know. You don't know what you're buying. You don't know what you have to do. And so to have somebody to take the time to really walk through this process with them is so vitally important.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just, and this goes to me being a younger person in the industry, I guess. I would encourage anybody that is coming out of school or is going into the claims world to start small at a small carrier, and build up. Because to your point, Jen, I almost take it for granted sometimes. I deal with these, big Fortune 500 companies that they have a full risk management department. They know already what they're getting themselves into. They sometimes tell me what the deductible is even before I know it. And it just, like you said, Jen, it brings me back to where I started and just kind of perspective, right? Like some people just don't know because they don't have time.
Right.
And now, I'm lucky enough. I get people that basically tell me what's on the policy even before I read it. So, it's definitely interesting. Definitely a different world in certain aspects.
And there's pros and cons to it, right? Like I love and hate when we have other lawyers as our clients.
Yeah.
Because then like a lot of times I'll send our client whatever document I drafted. Here, you want to review it. Normally it comes back, okay, it's great, file it. And then you have another lawyer who's your client and they read it and it comes back with all these red marks on it. No. And so sometimes it's great to work with these small mom and pop companies. And sometimes it's great to work with the Fortune 500 companies, but it's all about getting the variety of experience.
Yeah.
Yes. For sure.
So, but and you and I had talked about this on the phone though, too, about like the younger generation and encouraging people to get into insurance. And as you said, like you even notice that it's like, it's hard to encourage the younger generation to go into insurance. So like, what do you think, as an industry they can do to entice people to come over?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely a topic that I discuss just in passing with people in the office and whatnot. I think we've done as an industry in whole, we've done a great job at it so far. I know a lot of these colleges are instituting risk management and insurance programs and starting to push it and market it from that way. I think a lot of it is, I would love the stereotyping from, insurance companies are out to get people to go away. I think we're ingrained from a young age to think, oh no, the insurance company doesn't do anything for us. Or and it's kind of this turning point, at least it was for me, where you get to a point where you're thinking about employment and you're like, oh no, like this is actually a great career path and an avenue. So I would love to see that. It goes back, I think it's just being able to make it marketable, which I think it is in some ways, especially from the sales side. I think it gets marketed better. From the claim side, I think it's an ongoing discussion, I guess is the nice way of putting that. It's no, what's the word I'm looking for? It's no shocker that we have such a senior business and age in claims. I forget, when I was in college, I remember them saying 70% of the workforce in the industry, insurance in general, would retire in the next 10 years. So that's 5 years from now, something like that. And that's how they used to market it to us. They used to say it was, such a great opportunity for employment. And if you got in at this time, there was growth opportunities and potential moving forward. And I think it's some of those things that we just need to keep preaching to people. And then just obviously it goes back to my profession and my role. But I think if we can promote a better claims product, and this goes for the industry in general, if we can promote that, it shifts everything. In my opinion, it makes people more admirable to the business. It wants people to come for any individual that has to deal with a claim. Maybe it's more of an opportunity for them to say, oh, I'll come to the insurance company and work for them now because I had a pleasurable experience with, whoever I worked with over there. So that's where I would start. It's a great question, Megan, because I think like I said, it's an ongoing discussion. It's really not, and I'm not really sure why it is this way, but I just don't feel like the insurance world is looked at by a young person like financial banking or Wall Street, or like some of these things that were so closely ingrained together, but just from a stereotypical standpoint, I don't think people really look at it as like, I'm going to get out of school and make all this money and have the opportunity to do it. So,
I was going to say something very similar, because I remember when I was in college, it was all investment banking was all that was pushed, really, or and maybe it's changed at this point somewhat, but I feel like there needs to be some discussion or education as to like, look, like you can be graduating with a business degree or an English degree or all different, like a communications degree, and like, let's face it, you graduate a communications degree, it's pretty hard to find a well-paying job. But you can segue that into insurance, and there's so many opportunities within the industry. Maybe it's not just claims, but there's other things that it's a well-paying position, and with so much growth opportunity. But I also feel like I remember looking back in my mind, the only thing I associated with insurance was sales. Right. Because like a friend of mine from high school, her dad was in insurance. He was an insurance salesperson or whatever. That was all I knew about.
Yeah.
And and to me, it seemed gross, like I was like, ew, like who wants to be a salesperson, and a lot of people, but it just wasn't me. And I just feel like the dialogue needs to change. Be like, look how different your day can be every single day. Like, do you do you want to learn something new, every day or every week, or do you want to like dive into a whole new topic and become, an expert on this topic? Like, are you curious? Like, it's such a good selling point for claims and for the industry, because it really is dynamic. There is so much you can learn, and every day is different.
Yep. No, I completely agree. I think it also just deters people because no one wants to work for the big bad wolf. Is what I think about it. But no, I completely agree. At St. Joe's, like the biggest majors were probably the pre-med and the accounting, and everybody used to go into that stuff, like the Big Four and Philly, and obviously the pre-med route. I have numerous friends at Villanova and all that stuff, but it's not, the insurance company isn't any farther removed from those companies than anybody thinks they are.
No.
I have multiple friends that I used to tell, you can do accounting and insurance. You can just work on the business side. You don't have to go to an accounting firm and do it.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, it's interesting when you really think about it, why it's so hard to get people into the industry. It's kind of puzzling if you think about it.
I know. I feel like it needs like a marketing campaign takeover. Like they need, like there's some, I'm not going to name names, but there's some insurance companies that do really good marketing. Like they need to hire their marketing firm to market the career option of it, not just buying insurance from said company, but like, hey, work for us. Like, and actually, not for nothing, I think Philly Insurance does a really good job at their presence out in social media as to the workplace, and what a great place it is to work. Like they do, I think, an excellent job as to the career path that's available to you.
So I feel like we've been pumping up Philly Insurance throughout this whole episode, but I will actually say this. So the founder of Philly Insurance, he was a St. Joe's guy, correct? And he was inspired by the Jesuit ideals.
Yes, correct.
So I myself went through 8 years of Jesuit education. And so it kind of goes back to like Meghan talking about like somebody being like forever curious, right? And most of the people that we have on this podcast are very curious people, because why would you go into insurance if you're not? Because you're learning something new every day. And I think that it fits in together very well. So in the Jesuit teachings, you learn for the sake of learning. And he took that to found Philly Insurance, but he also took the Jesuit acts of service. And he is was very big on founding the company and everyone serving their community and the greater Philadelphia community at large. And I love that they promote that, because I think that's so important, because it goes back to like everyone thinking like these big bad insurance companies, but no, like this is just this is a Philly company that wants to give back to the community and, give back to the Eagles or support the Eagles. So it's really cool. And I think a lot of the other companies do the same thing. Yeah. And it's a great thing to learn from, like to be a big part of your community and to support everybody and to promote everybody else.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really goes back to like the backbone of insurance companies in general, right? Like, yes, it's a business. It's a business. Okay. Yes. I'm not here to say it's not a business and they're not making money. Yes. But it is to help your insurance and to, and by giving back to the community, you are, you're helping your insureds in your community. And, I feel like that should be highlighted more so than the plaintiff's bar, which, puts up billboards, especially in the Philadelphia area, that eat insurance companies for breakfast and, and all that type of advertising. I think that's what kind of gives a lot of the bad rap to things is the advertising that's out there that frankly, they don't have much control over because it's not their own.
Yeah. No, they're great points. And we didn't even get into it. And you guys being lawyers know it more than I do, but the litigious space in this country in some areas is just unbelievable. But but yeah, I think that to your point, Megan, about how these personal defense attorneys market themselves, I think it gives a bad image. But also, to your point, Jen, Philly did a great job, because I don't know if you guys know, but when McGuire first started selling insurance, it was to deaf individuals in his community because they couldn't get insurance anywhere else.
Wow.
So it really did start, on the backbones of his neighbors and people that he lived in the same building with, that I think we've sort of lost because, these companies get so big, and we have so many insureds, and half the time, if you talk to the CEOs, they're probably like, yeah, I can't even keep track of it all. Because we're in so many different areas and locations, and it's hard to reach all of them and give back, through the charitable funds that everybody does, and the donations and stuff like that. So, the big scale definitely makes it harder and becomes a hindrance, I guess you can say. But that's just the world we live in, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to divert this conversation very quickly. Nathan, I heard you talking about meeting friends at sporting events, and I know that you are a born and raised Philly guy.
Yes. Yep.
Eagles fan?
Yes. I will be rooting. I'm actually going to the game on
no
Sunday.
Way.
So
no way.
Yes, I'm very lucky. That's another thing this industry has given me, opportunities. Yeah. So that is very nice, but it's also I've met a lot of friends and people that I call friends now that were once colleagues, that we can go and have a good time and stuff like that. So I'm very lucky. But yes, Jen, big Philly fan. My favorite team is probably the Phillies. I was a baseball guy growing up, so I probably get the most animated about that. So it's good it's the winter time, so we don't have anything to say about that. But yes, definitely will be rooting for the Eagles. It was funny. We were on a LA wildfire call the other day, and we were talking about SoFi Stadium where the Rams play, and they were talking about maybe some event, they might have a game coming back there or whatnot, and somebody on the phone chimed in and they were like, they're playing the Eagles this week, they won't have a game to come back to. And I just
picking them with her down.
Yeah, I just could only laugh. And it's funny I say that now, because they'll probably, if they lose this weekend, I'll look like an idiot, but that's okay.
Positive vibes.
Yeah.
Do you go to a lot of the games?
Not. I don't have season tickets or anything like that, so I would say no. I try to go to a couple Phillies games a year, just pinpointing what works with friends and stuff like that. And then the Eagles is very much more, if an opportunity comes up, then we'll go. I don't have as many connections with the Eagles, and to be honest, tickets are more expensive anyway. So
yeah, they're not the easiest tickets to get your hands on.
No, so that's kind of why I shade away from that. But no, I'm definitely a fan of all of them. I probably don't get into the city as much as I used to, going to school in there, but that's okay.
Yeah. So I'll divert us back to insurance claims. So thanks for the diversion, Jen. Jen's always good to add the sports stuff to it. Like, she'll message me and be like, "Are you watching the blah blah blah?" I'm like, "I know, I'm not watching. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about."
Well, I said to you the other night about it. I was like, "Are you going to watch the Penn State game?" She's like, "What Penn State game?" I was like, "Seriously."
Yeah, I get. I watch too much of it. People tell me I watch too much sports in general. So, we'd probably be best friends, Jen. And Megan would probably shake her head at how many sports I watch.
I try to keep her like up on things,
Yeah.
like just be like,
I
there's a game.
appreciate it.
It is very important. If Penn State wins, they're going to the national championship.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, you just need to know the basics.
And actually, Jen, it did help me because I did talk to someone the other day and he was like, oh, I'm going to Georgia for the Ohio State game. I'm like, oh, yes, the championship. I actually knew something about it. Thanks, Jen.
Sneaking in every once in a while.
Yeah.
And this is probably not good advice, but it's the advice I give my kids because it's kind of like where I stand. I'm like, if you don't care too much about any individual team, you're never disappointed. And you can still celebrate the wins, but you're not heartbroken when they lose.
Yeah.
No. It's because I was a lifelong Georgetown fan. I can't, like, they're always losing, so I just don't even put any of my eggs in that basket anymore.
No, it is true, but it's also fun to like have a team to kind of to root for and to follow and to be excited about.
Yeah.
It's it's cold in Pennsylvania in the winter. Okay, you need something to keep you going.
That's true. It lets you look forward to something.
Yes, exactly.
Well, okay, so but at AXA, you're still doing property claims, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So what do you find now are some of, and I know we probably have touched on them, but what are some of your pressure points within property claims that you experience?
Oh, how much time do you have?
No. Approximately 13 minutes.
No, I'm just kidding. Some pressure points. I think the challenges arise from different insureds in different circumstances. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to dodge your question, but I think they're obviously case specific. Mm-hmm. A lot of challenges I see for myself, since we are an international company, there's some foreign challenges sometimes. We write a lot of policies that are originally out of a country. So the master policy is written in Germany, where they're headquartered, and they have U.S. affiliates and subsidiaries. So we write those local policies, but sometimes there's differences in conditions and languages that obviously coincide with each other. So that's one of the points. I wouldn't say it's really a challenge. It's just more so it can be a weird workaround sometimes. Mm-hmm. Obviously, from the broker's perspective, it's two avenues they gotta check off their list. So sometimes the communication can be not as streamlined as it should be. But other than that, I think the other biggest part of being a global company, I guess, is when we have these big events. We have these adjusters that manage these accounts and get written into these accounts. And we just have so many different people touching the file. It makes things more difficult. And especially being a part of a market where, we have 10% and Chubb has 10%.
Yeah.
Things get pushed off more than they should. And that can lead to obviously frustration from everybody's side. So I would just say it's more the logistical things. I wouldn't say the handling suffers in any way, but obviously if we're talking about the most clean and efficient product to the insured, sometimes that suffers just because we have 10 people on the market loss and we all have to come to the same decision. And when there's disagreement about that, in certain circumstances, it takes multiple market calls later to get to the final decision.
Yeah. And then you might have different philosophies on that, the value and all that too. So that adds an extra layer for you.
Yeah. And add in, I didn't even mention this, but add in different policy language, and that adds an even other one. When we have different language from every side, and people fail to take that into account and whatnot. So
and then you get that coverage attorney on board.
yes, exactly. It's funny. I just had a loss that is wrapping up, but I forget how many market members there are. But we have 4 different coverage councils on it, if you believe that.
Oh my
That represent the whole market. So yeah, it's definitely been. I've definitely heard the frustration from the broker about trying to coordinate, and even the insured, because we're all on different pages, and it's merely the same policy, but every attorney's got a different opinion, right? So
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, they're words. They're not simple.
Yeah.
They're interpreted in 18 different ways.
Exactly. Even after law school, it didn't really occur to me until I started. I handled claims for 8 years, and it didn't. You don't know, like a comma, an and, a but, a semicolon, how we could change somebody's life by $1 million. How you depend on it. Like, is it covered or uncovered? And just on these little tiny nuances, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's funny. I have this like conversation with my daughter and her friends, because whenever they're writing class, they're like, "Oh, it's so annoying. We have to like review commas today." I'm like, "Commas are very important."
They are. Yeah.
I was like, "This is a very important thing," and they're like, "Oh, when are we gonna use this?" I'm like, "When are you gonna use this? This is just the basis of everything."
The amount of
talking
time
to 6th graders,
I have heard, well, if there wasn't a comma here, it would be read differently.
Yes.
And if the and wasn't here and it was 2 words later, it would be different. Yes, it does. It's funny when you're in the profession us 3 are in, when you're closely defining words and meanings. Yes, and any difference of order or that changes basically the whole meaning.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that too, because I know you were also, and as is Megan, are big math and numbers people. And sometimes if my husband has a couple drinks, he'll start going on about how much he loves math and how math is like the foundation of the universe. And like, he just really loves math. And so like, it's just, that's the flip side. It's the math for the doctors, and the commas and the ands and the buts for the insurance people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like loving it as my 6th graders getting into like the more advanced math topics, because like the elementary math I couldn't even deal with because it makes no sense to me. So my 4th grader, I still have to be like, I don't know, this doesn't make any sense. But now like my older one's starting to do algebra. I'm like, oh, now we're getting into it. Now I can actually help.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I don't have any kids or anything, but I have 2 nieces and a nephew, and my oldest niece is just starting to write and form sentences and stuff like that. But I couldn't even tell you what they teach throughout school and elementary school. I ask her what she did at school during that day, and she tells me something, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't remember that at all growing up. But yeah, it is funny.
Yeah, they do learn everything sooner now. I have figured out. Yes, I'm like, oh, I don't think I learned this in this grade, but
no. But I'm also a terrible math person. I always say the best decision I made in my life was marrying my high school math tutor. The kids come home with questions. I'm like, where's Dad?
Yeah.
No, too bad.
Yeah, we have a math house, so yeah. Like during the other day, or not the other day, it was not so long ago. I was like, oh, like let's like, why don't you download this app and you can? I was trying to teach her algebra before, like right now they're doing like simple algebra, but I was like, oh, like you'll get ahead. Let's do this. She's like, she was complaining to her friend. She's like, it was a Friday night. My mom was trying to teach me algebra. I was like, but it's fun. It was fun for me. I'm like, I can't wait until you start to do calculus. And that's when you said, when you hit Calc 3, I'm like, calculus was my absolute most favorite math. But I was a math major, so I like really, really enjoyed all. To me, it was just fun. It's like fun and games. Yeah,
you probably had the same thought my mom did. My mom and dad were both math majors in college. So they were probably like, oh, math, when the kids come home, oh, it's piece of cake. But yeah.
But you know what's funny, and I think I mentioned this to you when we talked on the phone, is, when I was in college, no one talked to me about being an actuary. Like I didn't even know that was a career. And I wish someone had, because at that point I remember looking into my postgraduate options and being like, maybe I'll get a PhD in math. No one was counseling me on what I could potentially do with my degrees. I was just like, I don't, and it sounds like that has changed, or at least I hope it has, because I would have loved to go with the actuary route, I think. I don't know if I'd like all those tests. That sounds terrible.
My goddaughter is in college. She's and I was talking to her after her freshman year, and she loves math. And she's like, I want to major in math, but I don't know what to do. And I was like, you should be an actuary. And we had a whole conversation about it, and I forgot. And then over the summer, I saw her, and I was like, so are you interning anywhere? What are you doing? And she's like, yeah, I got an actuarial internship, like you told me to.
It's great.
I was like, oh my gosh, you listen to me.
At least someone does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny looking back. I think in my AP stats class in high school was the only teacher I had ever heard of mention actuary or actuarial. And then my mom obviously mentioned it growing up. But yeah, other than that, I don't remember any teacher pushing it. That's for sure.
No, I wish someone had for me. Well, I mean, not totally, because I'm happy where I am. So everything happened for a reason. But well, Nathan, we're just about out of time, but I want to ask you this before we close up. Knowing what you know now through the the last few years in the industry, what advice would you give, younger Nathan, because you are still young. You're not a little bogey like Jen and I.
Advice I would give. I would say just get ahead of things. I guess if that could be my motto for the working world, and obviously what I've learned to this point. And that's in every aspect. Get ahead of your personal life so it doesn't, intervene with your professional life. Get ahead of tasks on your day so it doesn't, they don't stack up at the end of the day. Get ahead of calls and things you don't want to do. So obviously you can learn from them moving forward. And we always say it in the claims world, be proactive rather than retroactive. So that, I think that would be my advice. If that's a lame one, I apologize, but
no, that's great.
I think it goes into day to day what I think about. There was somebody at Philly, I can't remember who told me, but they said always strive to be the person that never procrastinates out anything. So they were like, I look at a task and I never want to say, oh, I'm going to come back to this one.
Yeah.
And that's why I think stereotypically I should say this, because I don't know this to be true, but you always hear about the younger generation doesn't want to do anything, and we have social media and everything gets given to them. And of course, I don't want to say that to be true about anybody, but I'm just saying if, I had an overall message, it would just be proactive in your teachings and obviously your impressions with people.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's really great advice. And I need to take it for myself. I'm not a procrastinator, but I am, like, if something is going to require a lot of mental energy, I do find that I'm like, I put that off till the time that I know I'm ready to give that mental energy.
Yeah.
Like, let me hit the low-lying fruit first, or I have to pick when in my day I want to accomplish it, because later in the day is generally not good. The middle of the day is the best for me. I like to do low-lying fruit early and late, and do the heavy lifting in the middle of the day with, I think, give my brain some time to warm up.
Yeah. You're prioritizing.
Yes.
Prioritizing. I can't. Sorry about that. I can't speak, but well, I can't say I'm proactive about everything. I let laundry sit in the basket for days on end. So that's my downfall.
Jen and I had this conversation yesterday about
laundry. Yeah, that is my downfall.
I like to do the laundry. I don't like to fold it. So it just sits there in a pile till Saturday afternoon, and I have my rockin' Saturday afternoon of folding laundry. Well, Nathan, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm so glad you were able to share your experience and your rise into insurance. And I'm sure we're going to see and hear about great things that you're going to accomplish moving forward, because you're only at the beginning, right?
Yeah, hopefully. Yes.
I have no doubt. And of course, for all our listeners out there, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to Claims Never Sleep. You can find us on your favorite streaming platform. You can also find us on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.